Recording. All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's now 9:35 a.m. and I'd like to call the April 13th meeting of the STP Project Selection Committee to order. As permitted by the Governor's Disaster Declaration of March 31st, 2023, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for this committee today. To ensure as transparent and open a meeting as possible, we posted the meeting materials 1 week in advance. We'll provide a recording of this meeting linked on our website, and we'll take all votes by roll call. Let's begin with a roll call of members in attendance. Mary?
All right, good morning. If anyone is sitting in for a regular member, please state your name when I call the member's name. Dan Burke, CDOT. Grant Davis, CDOT.
Here.
Jeff Shriver, CDOT.
Here. And I believe Vig Krishnamurthy is on sitting in for Dan.
Yes. Hi, this is Vig sitting in for Dan. Apologies.
Okay. Thank you, Vig. Mayor Shelkey, Mayor Rockingham, Kama Dobbs.
I am here.
And our non-voting advisory members, John Donovan, FHWA.
Is here.
Tony Greep, FTA. Chris Snyder, representing the counties.
Here.
Heather Mullins, representing the RTA.
I'm here.
And Chad Riddle, IDOT.
You're in Schaumburg.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Mary. We do have a quorum. So before we get started with committee business this morning, I just wanted to take a moment to say how saddened our CMAT family is by the recent passing of President Alice Gallagher. Her passing reminds us to be grateful for the time that we have together. So I just wanted to thank all of you for being a part of this committee and our greater CMAT family. I also want to welcome Grant Davis as a regular member of this committee representing CDOT, taking the place of Kevin O'Malley, whose last day with CDOT is, I believe, either today or tomorrow. And so we, thank Kevin for his service and commitment to this committee and welcome Grant, who has often participated as an alternate, as an official member of the committee. Staff does not have any additional announcements, nor are we proposing any agenda changes. But does any member of the committee wish to propose any changes or make any announcements? All right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to approval of our minutes. We have before us the draft minutes of February 9th. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Grant Davis, motion to approve.
And a second? Do I have a second from Jeff or Vig?
Second.
Jeff, thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, Mary, will you call the roll of the voting members present, please?
Vig Krishnamurthy.
Aye.
Grant Davis.
Aye.
Jeff Shriver.
Aye.
Kama Dobbs.
Hi. All right, thank you, Mary. And everyone, the motion carries. Next on our agenda, we'll review the active program management reports contained in the agenda. The first report in the meeting packets provides the current status of shared fund active projects. On the final of the report is the status of the CRISA funded projects that were selected by this committee. There's really no significant updates or issues to bring to your attention. The FTA grant amendment is in progress for CTA's project, and Batavia's Prairie Street project has slipped to letting while they're waiting on the BNSF Railroad to execute the agreements that were ordered by the ICC. As shown in red on the report, there are three projects programmed in the current year that did request additional funding during the call for projects. Also, the final CRISA Shared Fund project is still working on land acquisition, but is otherwise ready for letting. The contingency program report is also attached. The only thing I wanted to draw your attention to is in the notes on projects that requested consideration in the current call for projects. Those are highlighted in red. Also, just with this contingency program set to expire on September 30th, we did see some drop off in sponsors that chose not to submit any quarterly updates, and anticipate that continuing as folks anticipate the expiration of that program. Welcome, Mayor Rockingham. Are there any questions regarding the status reports? All right. If not, next up is our current accounting update. This update includes obligations through March 31st. It also reflects the expiration of funds that were carried over from federal fiscal year 2022 to 2023. So it is showing negative balances in FY 2023. This accounting does not, however, include changes to the out-year programming marks that Russell will talk to us about a little later. Following our regular accounting summaries in the packet is a more detailed look at the expiration of those carried over funds that have not been obligated and the transfer of those funds to the redistribution balance. So I know this is going to be tiny, but I'm going to put it up on the screen here just so we can talk about it a little bit. As a reminder, when we carry funds over at the end of a federal fiscal year, the amount that we've carried over is linked to the project phases that have a reasonable expectation to be obligated within 6 months. So those are those projects that we issue those extensions to. Because they're expected to obligate within 6 months, those carried over funds do expire on March 31st if they're not obligated. But from an accounting standpoint, we do always use the carried over funds first. So as each body obligates funds throughout the federal fiscal year, whether it's those projects that were extended or not, we use up that carried over funding first. So when staff reviews the obligations that have occurred through March 31st, which are labeled as row G in this spreadsheet, we compare that amount to the amount of funds that are expiring, which is row B in the spreadsheet. If the obligations are less than the amount carried over, then that difference is what expires on March 31st, and that's shown in row H. So just for example, in the shared fund, we carried over, about $30 million, but we've only obligated $18 million so far. So that means $12 million has technically been transferred to redistribution. And that's the case for the shared fund, as well as CDOT and 3 of the councils of mayors. 2 of those 3 councils are not fully programmed at this time, so even when we reduce their marks due to the expiration of funds, they don't need to make any changes to their programs. Staff is right now working with the 3rd council, as well as CDOT and ourselves for the shared fund, to make the program adjustments necessary to maintain fiscal constraint in the TIP, and where appropriate to reflect that we do reasonably expect to reach 100% obligation, and therefore we're planning to use redistribution later in the year. So that's how some of those projects will be reflected in the TIP, is as planned use of redistribution. These adjustments that we're making right now will be reflected in the program status reports and regional accounting at our next meeting. So are there any questions regarding the accounting summary? From members of the committee or anyone else in attendance? All right, if not, I will go ahead and ask Russell to give us a quick review of the attached marks memo for federal fiscal years 2024 through 2028.
All right, so attached is the new marks. They were developed because the shared fund is doing their call for projects, so that's why they were developed at this time. We do a marks table annually for both the STP shared fund and the STP local program, since they're related. I don't know, Kama, can you put the marks table up there or not?
Oh yeah, give me just a minute.
Okay, so while Kama's doing that, I'll go over what happened. So these marks are different than what we normally would have And that's why we're explaining it a little bit here. So what happened is there was a large increase, about 5%, in what was made available through the circular that IDOT put out in January. Those funds are the funds that we will make available in the TIP in 2024. However, in discussions that we have with IDOT and with FHWA, it is clear that there are some one-time bumps that led to a 5% increase. There are also some fund sources that are part of what we call the core that is used to develop how much funds go to STP through the IDOT process that are unlikely to remain in the core. So as we go forward, what we did is, I think is the mark being shared at some point. Okay, the screen changed, so that's why it threw me off. All right, so what happened is we show annual increases in the STP marks starting last year. In prior years, we used to hold whatever we had in the current year constant and just have that same amount for all 5 years. What we are doing this time, and we started last time, is we show annual increases because that's what the IIJA actually has, is annual increases. However, those annual increases are not 5%. So showing a 5% annual increase would have us have way too much programming than anybody would be comfortable with. And we don't want to commit to funding the projects and then that funding doesn't materialize. The annual increase is roughly about 1.7% for the STP program. If we didn't have these kind of exceptional things happen related to extra funding that led to about a 5% increase in 2024. So what you will see in the marks is that the 2024 number, the 213,302,679 that goes to the region, is kind of a high watermark for the next 3 years. And that's because we're reducing the base that we then contribute to the STP marks development. So IDOT only puts out a circular once a year, and it just has that year's funding. FHWA does multi-year apportionments. So we have to kind of marry the two things, and then we do a 5-year marks development. So what we've done is we've incorporated the 5% increase in 24, and then after that, we have reduced the base and then included increases in all the subsequent years from a reduced base of about 1.7%. That's why it takes us to 2027 to basically get to where we are going to be at in 2024. So it's a little unusual to see marks that are higher in 24 than they are in 25 or in 26. But that's basically what has happened, is that our base is reduced and we're not going to have the same rate of growth that we once had. We had assumed, for instance, that the 24 mark would have been a 1.7% increase or 2% increase roughly compared to what we had in 23, not 5%. So the way to look at this is really that money that we thought would be available in 24 and 26 really got pushed into 24. So we're hoping that projects and will be pushed more into 24 rather than being pushed back because the marks are a little bit lower than anticipated in future years. So overall, we still are receiving more money than we anticipated in last year's marks, but more of it's going to 24 and a little bit less of it is being distributed in 25 and 26. So if that makes any sense, good. And if it doesn't, I will take any questions now.
Are there any questions for Russell?
And I believe we distributed these marks to the planning liaisons in early March, late February. So they've had a little time to look at this. And what we're trying to do is, since we won't make the marks available since they're for 24 in the TIP until 24, it allows people to readjust their programs proactively and get everything lined up so that when we go to the new TIP, everything is in place. So hopefully we've given enough lead time with these new marks for people to look at their programs and redistribute funds and projects as appropriate.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Russell. And I'm going to do the awkward thing of switching my screen share here. maybe. Aha. Okay. All right, so moving on from the programming marks, next up is a summary of the applications that we received in the call for projects that closed on March 10th. And within the agenda packet, there were two files, so really a file and a link. The Shared Fund Applications Report linked in the agenda is a 45-page report that shows all of the applications as they were entered into ETIP by applicants. And then the preliminary application list in the packet is a shorter summary of the applications received that has preliminary cost and eligibility information details, and that list was provided to council staff and CDOT on the 31st of March for their use in determining sub-regional priorities. So that list is also the basis for the summary that I'm about to give. So in total, across all of the funding programs, we received 129 unique applications. These applications have a combined total cost of over $2.8 billion, and they're requesting a total of over $1.15 billion in federal CMAQ, carbon reduction, STP, and or TAP funds. More than 35 of the applications that were submitted requested consideration under multiple fund sources, which is why on this slide, the three numbers there add up to more than 129. As in past cycles, we can see that the CMAQ program is the most popular. That's probably because it has the largest amount of funding to program. So we did receive 81 CMAQ applications that will also be considered for carbon reduction, 60 shared fund applications, and 27 TAP local applications. In the shared fund, we received, as I said, 60 unique project applications. 17 of these projects also requested additional funding from CMAQ and TAP. These applications have a combined total cost for all phases and fund sources of over $1.5 billion and are requesting a total of $557 million, which includes about $15 million in requested transportation development credits. These 60 projects fall within the boundaries of 54 different municipalities, as well as all 7 counties. And there are 10 projects that are located in multiple municipalities. 8 of these projects are actually located within our highest need cohort 4 communities, though we did only have 6 projects that requested the use of TDCs. So there were 8 projects eligible, only 6 made requests. There were also 41 unique applicants, and 12 of those are in our highest need communities. CMAP staff is still working through eligibility determinations. Thus far, we have determined that 7 projects are ineligible due to not meeting either the $5 million minimum cost threshold or the inclusion in plans criteria. 4 additional projects that applied reported that their preliminary engineering had not started, so those projects will also not be considered eligible. The 60 projects are from 41 unique sponsors, with the majority of applications from suburban municipal sponsors, followed by the counties, the transit agencies, and the city of Chicago. As we've seen in the past, the location of projects is split pretty evenly between suburban Cook County and the collar counties, with 5 projects located wholly within Chicago, and 1 project not included in the pie chart because it would have just been a line, that's located in both Cook County and Chicago, and that's the Pace Halstead Pulse route. Digging a little deeper into the spread of suburban project locations, we can see that there are projects located within all 6 of the collar counties and all 6 of the councils within Cook County. So pretty similar spread to the past 2 cycles. This slide details the distribution of the applications across the different project types. So road reconstructions, not surprisingly, are again the most frequent application type with 22 applications. And like our last cycle, we did receive at least 1 application for each of the project types. You also probably notice that these counts do add up to way more than the 60 applications, and that's because several applicants requested consideration under more than one project type. So staff has begun the process of eliminating the consideration of projects that don't meet the need thresholds that were added to the methodology for this call. For example, as you'll recall, if there's no roadway, water, or rail barrier identified, then a project wouldn't be eligible for the bike ped barrier elimination. Likewise, if pavement condition is rated as good, projects won't be considered for road reconstruction. So there will be some projects that drop out of the list in certain categories. Particularly those projects that requested consideration in multiple categories. I think that as people fill out the application, they see the check boxes and they check everything that they think might apply to the project without really thinking about whether the project meets the minimum criteria for that project type. So I don't think we're going to wholly eliminate any projects, but may eliminate consideration of projects within multiple categories. So we're still digging into those analyses now. So shifting now away from the number of projects to the funding requested, it's probably no surprise to anybody that the majority of the requested funding is for construction and implementation, but we did receive requests for all phases of projects, including $4.4 million for projects wanting to do their phase one only. So in our cohort 4 communities. The funding requests were spread across all 5 fiscal years as shown here. And we can see that requests for engineering funding tends to be in the earlier years, but construction, as usual, is spread out across all of the years. As we just heard from Russell, the annual marks for the shared fund over the next 5 years are, roughly in the 31 to 33 million ballpark. We're currently over programmed in federal fiscal year 2024 by about $7 million, because that's all on one project, which is CDOT's LaSalle Street Bridge. We're confident that we can work with CDOT and IDOT, as well as, potentially tapping into redistribution funding to ensure that that project is made whole in fiscal year 24. But, that over programming means that it will be pretty much impossible to add any additional projects from this call for projects into federal fiscal year 2024. So, we had a request for $118 million in that first federal fiscal year, and we're not going to be able to accommodate probably any of that. And so that's going to mean that most projects that are awarded funding will probably be awarded funding in years later than what they requested. And, that has implications across, all of the scheduling and programming. So it'll be delicate to balance, as it always is, but, we'll follow the same methodologies that we have in the past, where the highest ranked project will get the first crack at the schedule that they requested and move on from there. So I know that was a really quick summary. It's takes a couple months for us to process through everything. So this is the information we have so far. The next steps in analysis, the subregional priorities from the councils in CMAP are due on April 21st. We anticipate having draft scores available in late May or early June. And as in the past, we'll share those with applicants just to look for any red flags where we may have misinterpreted information provided. And then we will have a staff recommendation ready in early July for this committee's consideration, as well as the start of public comment. Just for those that are interested, that's the conclusion of the shared fund summary, but a similar presentation will be given about CMAQ and TAP at this morning's CMAQ meeting that starts at 11. And then both of these summaries, slide decks, will be posted on the Call for Projects website so that folks that want to dig a little deeper into the numbers that I just flew through can do so. Are there any questions about the summary or any of the applications we received? Again, there was more detail in the meeting packet, so if there were questions about anything specifically, happy to answer those. Nothing? Comments or gut reactions from the committee about what we received? Anybody surprised by what we received, or looks like what we expected? All right, I see nodding heads. All right. Well, if there are no questions, we'll move on to other business. Do any members of the committee have any other business they want to discuss today? I don't see anything coming up in the chat. If not, let's move on to public comment. We did not receive any public comment prior to today's meeting, and I don't see anything in the chat, but if I missed something, the rest of the staff bail me out on the chat box, or if anyone in the audience is in attendance that wants to make a comment, you're welcome to turn on your camera and unmute and state your name and your comment. Going once, going twice. All right, well, seeing or hearing no public comment today, our next meeting is scheduled for May 18th. Just a reminder that that meeting was put on our schedule in case we need to meet to review the subregional priority scoring. If there are no priorities that are identified by councils that are outside of their borders, then the committee won't need to meet in May and will instead meet next on July 13th. So, staff will send a notice out as soon as possible when we can make that final call. It should be, probably the first or second week of May that we'll make that call with the priorities due on April 21st. So, in either case, our next meeting will be in person at CMAT's office at the old post office. So we all need to prepare for that and add that travel time that's necessary to our calendars around these meetings. So there being no other business this morning, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Rockingham. Is there a second?
Second.
Grant, thank you. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye. Aye.
With all in favor via voice vote, this meeting is now adjourned at 10:03 a.m. Thank you, everyone.